Heart remedy for mountain scars, dedicated to the Catalina mountain range. They call you Big Fire Horn Scar. Now, we share more than one-sided childhood want for steady, teenage neglect or need, adult designated guardian of consistency. Now we share. Something happened. Ripped through for you, centuries grown plants and soil. For me, generations of ancestral grown skin and bone. Both precious, unique, not easy. We know how to be fierce, tie our roots to ever-shifting plate tectonics. We share beauty, cloud wisps cratered through our valleys, drops of rain that come too fast. They call me deformed. I could never find shoes, junior high nickname of crippled bitch, anesthesia mask held unyielding over mouth by man's hands, as I begged through the plastic and gas for just one unencumbered minute to prepare. Words fail to hold enough nuance of being split open sideways, shuffled around, fondled from the inside. No pain scale number to describe teeth shattering fire, which lasts for months. Numb is not the absence of pain. It is the description of the void where one sits to examine tender bits held. These pieces are so precious now. The remnants of what is left, they become new soil to work with. They call you horn, fire, scar, big. Buffalo grass planted in our desert to feed cattle. Surgeries to coerce body to be functional. They always have some reason to insist poison will fix unproductive citizen. After the allotted amount of time, my family would refuse to bring my wheelchair, insisted pain would lessen if I just tried harder, didn't let it stop me, stopped acting like a baby, could accept that it was time to stop using the crutch. But they could never understand crutches let one lean, brace body from ground, allow one to go further than with these sliced up feet. They call me difficult. Rebellion and refusal to hurt self for promised gain, marked adult independence with ditched arm brace, limbs free to curl, shudder, move with a lilt, a rhythm all my own. I know, and you know, that big horn fire scar and fierce crip, name reality, a legacy. We know better than some trauma sits enmeshed in survival. Our duty, believe in mending, encode in our DNA confidence that generations from now, they will know us by 100 sorted, succulent, honored names. For me, disability is located in body, mind, of course, place, and culture. And poetry is also located in body, mind, place, and culture. So for me, I don't know how, like both of those things that live in the same place. And so they both sprout, you know, that fruit together. They're interwoven to me. So. You know, seeing the ways in which the environment is vulnerable and people are vulnerable through disability often. In our relationship with vulnerability and interdependence and, you know, this like myth of healing, right? That like people get really attached to this idea that things are restored back to the way that they were before. Like that's what we desire. And for me, a lot in my work, I talk about mending and how different that is in terms of, yes, things can shift and come back in some ways, but there's going to be different textures. It's going to look different, feel different. There's, there's an evolution that happens there. So I think for disability poetics, for me, that like nuance, the claiming of vulnerability as just part of life is a really key part of that. So there was a big fire that ripped through the mountain range, and the title of that they gave this, what was left behind, is they called it a scar. So the official name is Bighorn Fire Scar. I was like so touched, and lived through this fire, lived in the city with the smoke, with the fire, as many of us do. Wildfires are just so much part of our lives now. But I was relating to this idea of what's left behind, these scars that are left behind. And what really fueled the fire was buffalo grass, which was planted way back in the early 1900s to feed cattle. And so it's a really fast growing grass that's not native. And I was also really captured by this idea of unproductive citizen. Like, to make the desert productive, we had to plant this like grass to feed cattle. And surgeries are often posed to us as making us more productive, more able to participate in society. So I was just really relating on the scars. And for me, the metaphor just became such a container to hold all of that. I love wrapping like a lot of gentleness into my poetry, even when it's about really hard things. So I love including that dialectical, the contradictions, right? Of like beauty can exist, and like we can own this fierceness and this beauty at the same time as this really scary vulnerability, and change is happening. And I think that, yeah, like the line trauma, sits enmeshed in survival. I think that it's like, how do we bring both sides, a lot of nuance to like what we're talking about in our poetry, both with disability and, for me, a lot of times with climate change poetry, it can be so intense. And for good reason. I mean, we're going through some scary times. Um, and like there's also beauty and this, and like we have this love for this place that we live too. So both of those things are so important to me in the work. What I struggle with in eco poetry is it's often a lens of people looking at nature and like talking about how this is impacting us. And I think through disability, I have such a lived experience of change and vulnerability, and um, things not being what I want them to be, not getting to fit into society in the way that I, would ideally want to, or being able to participate. And so holding a little bit bigger picture of like, it's not just about how this is affecting us. It's like our relationship with places is changing. And there's a lot of grief that people are expressing that I have a longing, and ended up writing a lot around, okay, yes, this grief lives here. And how do I still touch what scares me? How do I still engage when I am feeling so much grief and want to withdraw? A lot of times for me in eco poetry, I feel like I feel reactionary, like I want to withdraw because it's so intense and so hard, and I have a hard time staying with that. And I'm really curious about the practices of staying with those things through poetry, through my body, through culture and place. Yeah, especially where I live. I mean, we're already seeing a lot of climate migration happening. and feeling the effects of people trying to find livable places. Uh, I think one of the things too is in terms of disability is that we also have a lot of wisdom to share in this larger picture that is just completely not part of the conversation right now, about living in a state of sort of these in between times and how to work together. You know, we have a lot of lessons in interdependence because we've had to learn that in order to survive. So we have some real practice with some of the things that people talk about in sort of this, like, I don't know, way that always feels a little disconnected from real life to me. Uh, so yeah, not only like are we going to be impacted significantly, of course, it's like we also have things to offer.